Welcome back. Ready for step 7 of mindset mastery. I'll share my screen with you and we'll dive right in together. So today is specifically about applying the centered mindset that you've been creating to how you operate in business. Along the way, as we've sort of seen through the dangers of a fragile mindset and distinguished the possibility of the centered mindset, we've been pointing here and there to why this is so important in a business context. Now, today, we're going to spend our whole time making that as explicit as possible. So, number one, we're going to really focus on and illuminate this whole idea about where you're coming from is more important than anything else. So in order to ride the waves of entrepreneurship, you must be centered as a human being. Without a centered mindset, you're likely to drift off course. We've perhaps said this before, but it's worth repeating. There's lots of competition out there in the entrepreneurial space, and whatever your industry is, I'm sure there's heavy competition there. And especially with the online market now, it's not like you're only competing against your local competitors. You've got kind of a worldwide competition. So, a lot of people, sure, they're gonna fall short on just kind of basic business competencies. They're not going to get it together in terms of a marketing plan. They're not going to really do the research on copywriting. They're not really willing to invest in support where it's needed. Maybe even the service that they're selling is not fully honed and fully developed. Maybe they're not really that great at sales at this point. And maybe it's a blind spot for them where they don't even recognize or know what's missing in their sales competency or incompetency. So for those kind of people, as long as you put the time and the effort on the sort of business management side of things, you should be able to outdo them, to outperform them in the marketplace. But there's going to be a lot of people actually who do achieve a certain level of business competency. They're going to have their ducks in the row in terms of marketing, sales, how they present their business, and their service or product is going to be very well developed and very attractive. Like I say, there's going to be a lot of people that meet those standards. And you're going to need to compete, and in at least in enough cases to be successful, you're going to need to win that competition for the customer. So where can you get your edge? I think it comes to your mindset. And the mindset is going to have many implications and influences on how you operate from day to day, from moment to moment. How you listen, what you say, what you don't say, how you say what you say, how quickly you give up, how much you hold on to or lament temporary setbacks. All these kind of things are going to have direct impact on your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly success. And in the big leagues of business, so to speak, where the competition is strong and you're dealing with professionals who know what they're doing, this is where you need to have this inner strength that's gonna carry you through, essentially, and it's gonna influence you in, I suppose, in the moment will be intangible ways. As I say, it'll influence the way you think, the way you listen, the way you speak, how you react to things. So while that may be somewhat intangible, it's going to have very tangible repercussions. It's going to turn into results. Now, I argue that without a centered mindset, you're going to tend to drift off course in your business. And there's different ways to drift off course. You could think of businesses you've probably heard of where they had or have a wonderful vision statement, mission statement for their company, and yet you watch how they operate. Maybe you've worked for companies like this. Maybe you've just read about them, and you see they've gone off course. They're not operating in alignment with the principles and values that they established. We'll talk more about this later, but for just as an example, you could think about the whole process or goal of customer service. I would argue if you take a company, which is really just a combination of individuals, and say the majority of those individuals are operating with the fragile mindset, their attempt at customer service is bound to come up short most, if not all of the time. Now, can they cover some of that over? Can they mask some of that? Sure. They can automate their email outreach. They can farm out their advertising and have their messaging be compelling and enrolling and attractive. But at some point, if they're not really coming from a centered place, I think what happens is they're going to inevitably see their customer as merely someone to manipulate, someone to exploit, someone to use, in essence. And over time, the public starts to see through that. Now, if it's a big enough company with enough global customers and fairly healthy revenue coming in, maybe that doesn't take it all down to zero. But if it takes it from the high water mark down 15%, that's going to have an impact. And then if their competition rises up and claims that 15% or a good proportion of it, there could be real implications of that, real negative implications. Now, we know that change is a constant in life. The universe is always evolving and changing, even down to the cellular level. That there's nothing stays static. Therefore, you can't control that. You can't control that there's going to be change. There's going to be fluctuation. There's going to be chaos. What can you be in control of? You can be in control of your mindset. You take that constant change, some of which is minor and no big deal, but some of which is highly disruptive and a very big deal in a business. And then you add to that a fragile mindset, you're going to end up with panic, stress, depression, and similar type of experiences. Now, the change is just happening. The change is just changing. Is that what's causing the stress and the depression and the panic? You know where I come from. No, I don't think what's happening in the world is causing that. It's a result of the fragile mindset and the whole artifice that the fragile mindset is built upon. Now, business people, they want to operate based on hard data and numbers and, real science, so to speak. So they rely heavily, typically, on strategizing very carefully and also working very hard, working long hours. But, it's like if you take an author who writes an outline of their novel, the novel could have actually a great outline, a great plot, a great series of occurrences and character development that all looks good on the page. And they can put hundreds of hours into writing the thing. But if they're coming from a fragile mindset, every other day, doubting themselves, desperate for approval, desperate for outside validation. First off, I don't think they'll finish the novel, despite the great outline that they created, despite their best intentions. Their fragile mindset is going to sabotage that project. And if somehow they limp through to the end just from sheer determination, I would argue that in most cases, the actual substance of the work is going to leave a lot left to be desired. And you, as a reader, you would actually, you would sense the kind of maybe sort of lack of soul missing from it. The execution, it's going to have something missing because your art is going to come. It's obviously coming out of you, and as I keep saying, you can't get beyond where you're coming from. So whatever is produced from where you're coming from is still within that box, that context in which you're creating. So it's the same thing with any entrepreneurial venture. I want you to have well thought out strategy. Really, I'm all for that, and I'm sure it will serve you. And you certainly need to work hard, and you don't want to be lazy and just live in hope that it's going to work out without putting the time and the effort into it. But it's not enough. It's not enough to do that. Not in the big leagues. Everyone works hard in the big leagues. Everyone pretty much has a well thought out strategy. It's a matter of, are you going to follow through? Are you going to stay with it when times get tough? Are you going to stay with it when times get extremely tough, very chaotic, when all your expectations are shattered? That's where especially the centered mindset is going to serve you very well. And in fact, I would argue is necessary and like indispensable. So another way to point to the fragile mindset in a business sense is with the idea of scarcity. Some people seem to have a scarcity mindset. I'm not the first one to invent that. There's lots of literature out there about that, and even directly related to business management. Some people seem to come from abundance. Some people, they seem to radiate abundance, and whether it's money or love or attention, they always seem to have enough. In fact, they usually seem to have more than enough. And then, as I say, there's others whom it's always a struggle. There's never enough, whether, again, it's money or love or attention or time. It's always scarce. Now, of course, they always have a story and a justification for why that's happening, and it's always something they say that has nothing to do with them. But the truth, in my opinion, is that it's pretty much all about them. It's all about where you're coming from. And if you're coming from a context of scarcity, there's a kind of inertia to that. And it almost inevitably leads to failure. It's to put it in simple terms, when you need it, when you're kind of desperate for the result, for something to happen that's the way you think it should be, the world, it seems to resist that. It seems to not want to give in to that. And I mean, just like if you try that in the dating world, imagine how's that going to work? Have you ever tried that? If you're coming from a place of scarcity, like, I don't know really how attractive I am, or I may not be that great of a catch, but my goodness, I need a date so bad, and I just need love so bad, and I need a relationship so desperately. How do you think that's going to work in terms of attracting someone who wants to be with you? Now, you might attract somebody similarly coming from this desperate, scarce place, but that's a whole other kind of disaster waiting to happen. If you want to attract somebody who's got it together, and it's someone who's not going to create endless drama, and someone you can actually build a strong foundation of connection and acceptance and trust and love with, I think that it's not going to work to come from this place of desperate scarcity. Well, business is pretty much quite similar, although you're not necessarily trolling for love. You are trolling for business. You're trolling for clients. Uh, is the client gonna be inclined to sign up with somebody who seems fragile? Uh, I, I I think you know the answer to that. Again, you can fool a few people. You can fake it to some extent. It's not a 100-0 proposition, but over time, when you're in the big leagues of business competition, it'll rear its head enough, and it will be the dividing line between sustainable ongoing success and pretty much struggle with intermittent success. And as we mentioned with the whole topping out part of the conventional success spectrum, even if somehow, whether you call it luck, right timing, maybe it's just the brilliance of your talent, you achieve a high degree of, by your standards, business success. If you're coming from a fragile mindset, a scarcity mindset, if you will, even there, you're going to be unfulfilled. It's going to feel like, was it all worth it? Why did I go through all of that trouble? I understand you're like, give me that problem. I'll sign up for that problem right now. And I understand. But again, you don't have to take my word for it. You could see it in some of your friends. You could see it in some of your associates. Just listen to enough public figures when they get real and vulnerable in their memoirs or certain interviews. They'll tell you this is the deal. This is what happens. This is predictable. You achieve the the gold medal of whatever it was that you were striving for, and you're left with this empty hole inside. And I know you'll say, look, I'll take my chances. You might say that, but in some ways, I would argue that this topping out phenomenon is actually the hardest thing to deal with of all. It's in a way, it's even harder to deal with than failure, because once you've somehow uh, uh, went through the eye of the needle and achieved that success, and you're still not happy, you're still not fulfilled, you're not satisfied, I think there will grow within you a certain discontentment that's quite deep, because you see, before you top out, you could keep telling yourself that it's all going to be better one day when I achieve what I am dreaming to achieve. But now, if you actually get to your achievement and it still didn't bring you the experience of life that you really were expecting, that's quite devastating, because then what's the next move, right? There's not an easy to see right move at that point, because you sort of played your card, you played your ace. It didn't work. I mean, what's next? You know, I suppose at that point, some people sort of throw up their hands and join an ashram, or go off on silent retreat or something like that. And of course, they'll eventually find that unfulfilling too, because it's about who you're being. It's about where you're coming from. That's always going to make the difference. And you just, despite your best efforts, despite anyone's best efforts, you can't escape it. You can't get beyond it. It's like super glue that keeps you stuck. Now you can transcend it, but that's only by confronting it and being with it, and in a sense owning it and embracing it and accepting it, as we've been working on up till now. But if you're coming from it, trying to fix it by external means, never going to work. Doesn't matter what you come up with, it's never going to work. As I say, you can't get beyond where you're coming from. Now, we have this terminology in the mindset business that we sort of shorthand by saying be, do, have, be, do, have. What we're getting at there, I think it is a rather profound point, is that we all want to end up being happy, being successful, being fulfilled, being valuable, being loved, being accepted, being fulfilled, being satisfied, all this stuff. But most people, they go about it in exactly the wrong way, because they seem to say to themselves, I'm going to achieve the beingness that I want when I do what I need to do in order to have the symbols of success and love and happiness. And once I have the trappings of success and so forth, then I'm going to feel it. I'm going to experience it. I'm going to be it. It's all going to just be Shangri-La, because I did what I was supposed to do and I created what I was supposed to create. Now give me the being that I am due, that I deserve. It doesn't work. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't work. All the doing and the having is not going to create the being, or the having and the doing is not going to create the being. Only the being creates the being. The being is ineffable. Being is its own realm, its own domain. Now, on the other hand, who you're being will greatly influence what you do, how you do what you do, and therefore what results you create. Being is always the source of results, because being is the source of action. See, a lot of people in business, they're always looking for what's the right action. Again, what's the marketing strategy? What's the advertising strategy? What's the negotiation strategy? What's the sales strategy? Just tell me what to do that's going to get me the result. It's not that strategies don't work, it's that who you're being will either sabotage the strategy or allow it to work. If you've ever followed sports in any degree, you've seen this. And if you haven't, you can take my word for it. There's been plenty of teams, whatever sport you could think of, or individuals in, golf and tennis and so forth, where plenty of people would say that they weren't the most talented athletes. Their strategies per se weren't always the most innovative. They weren't necessarily anything special. But where they were coming from, who they were being, was so strong, so powerful, so impressive, that the strategy was kind of supercharged. But it was supercharged because of the beingness, because of where they were coming from. Now, you can either operate from an inherited or an invented context of being. The inherited context is the context of survival, as we've looked at. Survival, scarcity, fragile mindset. That's the inherited context. That's what's waiting for you when you're born into the world. It's, as we've gone over, it's tied in with our nervous system, with our genetic code, with the way the culture is put together in terms of establishing norms and what's acceptable and what's appropriate and what are the standards of behavior and standards of success and beauty and so forth. That's already all set, just kind of waiting to capture us when we're born. So we're going to inevitably fall into the survival context. The only way out of it, if you could even say out of it, is, as I mentioned just a moment ago, to recognize it for what it is. Like, let me say the fish in the water. The fish has no possibility, if it doesn't first get that it's in water. It's lives in a context of water. Now, I'm not saying animals have the same consciousness as human beings necessarily, but if you look in terms of evolutionary theory, you will see that there's some theory out there which says that the evolution of life began in the ocean, and eventually fish did walk up on land. Now, in actual reality, it's a function of probably random and chance and instinct, just kind of, environmental factors, just kind of, interplaying, and then it happens. And then over time you get mutations, and eventually the fins become just legs, and the story. But you could say that in a way, in kind of a mysterious way, that the fish sort of, oh, okay, I do live in water, but it's not the only option. You see, you wouldn't even consider a new option unless you got the option that you're in. See, if what you're in, if the context you're swimming in is the only game in town, and you never even question it to notice it, then of course you're just completely and totally stuck and there's no possibility whatsoever. So what we've been working on up till now is getting to a place of understanding the survival context, seeing what drives it, seeing all of the factors that interplay to put it in place and to keep it going. And then something sort of magical happens when you come to grips with that and you face that and you own that and you make it real, not just on a theoretical sense, but real to you as an individual human being. And you sort of, you see the game of life for what it is. And the magical thing that happens is that by facing it, by owning it, by accepting it, you in essence, you transcend it and you're not completely stuck with it. So for example, and if we just sort of, look at life in an existential sense, if you spend your whole life psychologically running away from the whole idea that I'm going to die and running away from rejection and failure and embarrassment and just, trying to control your inner state so that it's always comfortable and very little disruption, then you can kind of achieve your goal, not completely, because the world gets in despite your best efforts, but although you're not sort of disrupted by tons of terribly risky situations because you're so cautious, you're so careful. At the same time, because you're running away from it, you're sort of pulling it toward you all the time. So somebody who's afraid of embarrassment can you kind of see that that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily avoid embarrassment? Yeah, they'll do their best to stay out of those kind of situations, but it's kind of like their embarrassment waiting to happen, as we talked about previously. And somebody who's always trying to avoid rejection to just kind of play it safe so that I'm never rejected and my ideas are never rejected, my feelings are never rejected, my identity is never rejected. They can, like I say, to some extent, live in the sort of bubble of safety. But since they're so resistant to rejection, in a way, it's like they're still always being rejected. If you follow me, it's like the other people, they won't, they don't get on the phone. They don't want to be in the meeting. They don't want to have the talk that would open these kind of conversations up. So yeah, they're not necessarily hearing the rejection from other people because, they're basically like, see not, hear not. But even though they've sequestered themselves psychologically from hearing the so-called rejection, that intense resistance of it is really just, it's creating like almost constant rejection. It's sort of paranoia about rejection, so that, yeah, I'm not going to hear that person out there rejecting me because I won't talk to them. But since I'm so resistant to it, it's as if they are rejecting me. It's because they, at any moment they could, if I drop my guard, the impact on me inside is one of constant rejection, constant embarrassment, constant failure. I hope that makes sense. Now, you can't get rid of the survival context, the scarcity context, the scarcity mindset. You can't just disappear it, like, it doesn't work like that. But by being with it, seeing it for what it is, embracing, oh yeah, okay, right, I'm afraid of rejection, I'm afraid of embarrassment, I'm afraid of failure. Maybe I'm always going to be like that. Maybe I'm always going to have those thoughts. I'm always going to have those initial triggered reactions because of my own insecurities. Okay. Maybe all of that is there now, has been there, and will be there. But here's the transcendence. The transcendence is not that that disappears. The transcendence is, I don't care. I'm all right with it. I'm not going to let it stop me. It's no big deal, actually. Yeah, I'm programmed to be afraid of this stuff. Nevertheless, I'm not going to let it curtail my passions. I'm not going to let it sort of dim my light in the world. I'm take life as it is, including my biology, my nervous system, the whole hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the whole setup of the culture, which rewards the average person. I mean, rewards in the sense that they're not outcast. So I get all of that. I get that that's this the game that I was born into. But here's how I'm going to win this game. I'm going to win this game by choosing to play 100%, choosing that I'm okay with myself. See, that's the term. I'm okay that I'm insecure. I'm okay that I get afraid sometimes. I'm okay that I have my reactions to things people say. I'm okay with that. It's automatic. It's historical. It's built in. I'm not running away from it. I'm not ashamed of it. I accept it. And then now that is your superpower. That right there at the deepest level of analysis that I know how to get to, that's what's going to serve you in business. Coming from, can you see that superpower is going to sustain you through crisis? It's like, people want a crisis-proof business. Well, you got to be a crisis-proof human being. And that's what we're up to here. And remember, by standing in the light of your true self, you then open up the possibility of taking a stand about who you are. So that's the simultaneous point of a centered mindset. Yes, we accept our flawed nature, our insecure, scared little boy, little girl, whatever. We accept it. We even love it. We cherish it, but we're not going to be limited by it. And at the same time, we know that automatic self, that ego self, is not the full explanation of who we are. and that actually there's another magical, mysterious, incredible phenomenon called consciousness. And this consciousness, this invisible consciousness, is channeled right now through our body, through our mind, through this point of attention, so to speak. And as you know, we can't turn off being fearful for our ego self. We can be mindful that we are not our ego self. At the end of the day, at the end of the life, we are not our ego self. We are this true self, this consciousness, which infuses all life and is now channeled through us. And this consciousness cannot be threatened, cannot be destroyed, cannot be fixed or improved. It's, by its very nature, perfect, whole, complete. And it's not a thing. It's a space of possibility in which we dwell. Now, as we went through on the last step, it can be challenging to remain in the light of that reality. And that's going to add immeasurably to this centered mindset superpower that I'm inviting you into. And the meditation will support you with that. Just constant vigilance about it. Just stepping back. Okay, I'm not just this set of thoughts. I'm not just this set of physical sensations. I'm not just this set of emotions. I'm not just what my senses detect. I'm not even just the senses. I'm not just this brain. I'm not just this mind. I'm not just this nervous system. I'm connected to everything through the mystery and the majesty and the magic of consciousness. I know it's deep. I know it's very deep, and they're not teaching that at, Harvard Business School, but you are hearing it here, and I'm reminding you it's critical. It's going to just give you, it's going to give you kind of a way to pause, a way to stop. When the train of life, the train of business is seemingly on the rails toward, either some unknown result or what looks like a disastrous result, you can step back and pause and go, okay, it's okay. Whatever happens, I'm still conscious. I'm still connected to consciousness. If you want to live in panic and magnified insecurity the rest of your life, then just forget about all this true self stuff and just flush it away. But if you want some access to true inner peace, to true centeredness, kind of deep sense of fulfillment, then you want to pay attention to this true self stuff, and you want to keep opening up your access to it. And it's a process, and it's going to take work, and be patient with yourself. It's going to take work. You have the rest of your life to work at it, and it's real and it's happening whether you are aware of it or not. But the more aware of it you become, the more powerful you become. Now, let's look specifically at how to sell and promote from a centered mindset. Okay, so obviously, as entrepreneurs, we need to sell our service, sell our product, in some ways, sell ourselves. It's our creations is an aspect of ourselves in a way. So, first of all, discover the passion points of your offer. Look beyond the mere apparent value. See how your offer makes a difference in the life of your client, and become a true missionary of your offer. So here's where a lot of people, I think, make a mistake is they look at what they're offering in the barest of terms and kind of mundane terms. Oh, well, what are you selling? Well, I'm a skincare expert. I have skincare products, and I do skincare procedures, facials, and so forth. Okay. And that's accurate. If that's what you do, then that's a decent description, of course. But I don't think putting it in those terms is going to necessarily turn you on in the way you need to be turned on every day, so that you're going to offer that product and service in a compelling way that people just got to have it. So I think it's critical that you take whatever it is you're offering and see it in the most meaningful essence of what it's creating for other people. So if I was coaching that skincare person, of course, it would be over many hours and a lot more in depth than I can get into here. But briefly put, I would invite them to get in touch with how, when somebody invests in their skincare, it's in a way, it's a message to themselves that their health and well-being and also their physical presentation to the world is important, and they deserve to take care of it. So, of course, there's a lot of things that everybody will buy. It's like everybody will buy soap and shampoo and to some extent clothes, and there's things to drink. There's some products that are essential for all, or at least very vast majority of people. But something like skincare, not everybody invests in that at all. Now, maybe they'll wash their face, but beyond that, they don't really think about it. Yeah. Now, I'm not here to, I'm not the skincare advocate, but just off the top of my head, you could imagine there could be negative implications of that in terms of how their skin will age. And as I understand it, our skin is actually the how would I say it, the biggest organ in our entire body. And of course, everything inside of us, the world sort of, it's all protected by and of course, connected to the skin as the outer layer. So it's not necessarily intuitive that we wouldn't invest in taking care of our skin, but a lot of people don't. Now some people do. Some people are very much all over it. They get very high quality skincare, whether it's for their hands, certainly their face, their scalp, and there's you could work on any region of your body in terms of your skincare, but usually those that I mentioned. So why is it? Why do some people spend the money, but others don't? Well, I have actually, believe it or not, I have actually done some consulting with a skincare company in China. And they agreed with me that what seems to be the case is that a lot of people, they have a conversation, an internal conversation that that's not really important. They don't really need it. It's a kind of a luxury item. So what I'm saying to my skincare company that I'm consulting is, when you're working with people, yes, you're selling the product, you're selling your services, and it's, it'll sort of, help people avoid skincare problems. It'll clean up problems they do have, and it's just good for general maintenance of their skin. Yes, you got to make those cases, and you have to have you have to have an articulation of how you will help them with that. But beyond that, you get to enroll them that they're worth it, that they deserve to invest in essentially their health and well-being. See, I would tie it to their health and well-being. And also, of course, looking their best. They deserve to look their best, and they deserve the highest quality of life, which includes, obviously, a high degree of health and well-being. So in a way, as a salesperson for this product and this service, you're kind of a champion for people. You're kind of the wind beneath their wings, inviting them to regard themselves in a certain way, regard themselves as a treasure of some sort, as or to put it in other terms, a king, a queen, somebody very valuable, very important, and deserves the best. Now, you could take that same idea which I just used with that example, and I think you can apply that to any offering, any service, any product. And I think this is especially critical because I have a sense that, maybe when it's your business, if it's actually your business, you might be able to find passion in it ongoingly, just because it's going to put money in your bank, it's going to put food on your table, and if it's something you created, it's just kind of, you're fueled by that. But I think for a lot of people, that's not going to be enough. But especially if you have other employees which come on eventually to work with you, that's not going to be enough for them. Most people need more motivation, more kind of intrinsic motivation that compels them into action, and especially sales, because sales, as we know, you have to deal with rejection. So a lot of people try to avoid sales. So you gotta have a way of thinking about it that turns you on. So like to me, the thing that always turns me on is making a difference for people in their lives. So now in my case, I'm selling coaching, I'm selling training. So it's rather simple for me to make that connection that what I'm being with people about is going to enhance the quality of their life. I am quite sure if I got into another business, I would look at it like that. I remember a story about someone actually from the transformational education world, if you will, who began many, many years ago before he became quite successful and famous. He actually began as an encyclopedia salesperson. He had a little team of, I don't remember, maybe 10 associates who worked with him to go door to door. This is in like late 60s, go door to door selling Encyclopedia Britannica. And apparently, this became quite a successful venture. Believe it or not, yeah, it became quite big. They all did quite well. What he would do is he really pumped up these salespeople. He's like, yeah, we're selling these books, but really what I want you to do is connect with people. And I want you to be with them about what do these books represent for them, for themselves, for their family. So then the books, the encyclopedias, it's really about, if you had these books, you sit with your kids, you know, learn about this, that, and the other thing. You come together as a family. It's a wholesome family time. Family connection is strengthened. Your curiosity is enhanced. For yourself, you're contributing to your family through knowledge. You're contributing to yourself through access to this whole world of knowledge. So the associates of this person I was telling you about, they were really motivated to go out there and connect with people. Now, yeah, they wanted to sell the books at the end of the day, but what turned them on, what kept them going from door to door, was the difference they were making in these people's lives. I suppose that could come across as obvious, but I can tell you that that person was by far the number one producer for that company. Now, what do you say there? I mean, there's if it was so obvious, why weren't all the other associates doing the same thing? I think sometimes what perhaps looks obvious actually isn't as obvious as it seems. And there's things we take for granted and we think we get it, but let's just say there's levels of getting it. And this idea of looking for the passion and how it's going to make a difference for your clients is a crucial piece that's going to move you forward into being a strong salesperson. So then you really are like a missionary out there, and someone who's on a mission is a different animal than somebody who's just going through the motions or just, quote unquote, selling something. We all know, or most of us, we've heard the legends of Nike shoes, and they were apparently a visionary company, and Apple Computer seemed to have a visionary, missionary aspect to it that drove it forward in ways that similar companies were not. All right. Now, second, be an authentic servant of your customer. So we touched on this a little while ago. Let's go into this deeper now. Allow yourself to care about their well-being. Connect with them on a human to human level and be a generous listener. It's easy to see your clients or your prospective clients as tools, as means to an end. And you might think it's going to be draining to actually connect with them on a human level. You might even say it's impossible if you're working online and working with hundreds and thousands of clients who just click on something. And I hear that, but it's a place to come from. As I keep saying, it's a place to come from, and it's wherever you're coming from is going to show up inevitably in how people interact with your business, in what people see and hear, and ultimately how they choose to interact with your business. So I would argue, don't be afraid of that come from of care, the come from of I'm here to make a difference. I actually care that you succeed. I actually care that you're healthy. I actually care that your family is connected. I care that you get what you want out of life. That's what's driving me. So that customer service is not a moniker. It's not just some cliche phrase that I throw around or something that I know I'm supposed to do. It's actually a way of life. Like getting up in the morning because that's what I do is I serve people. I'm it's like I'm on this earth to make a difference in the lives and the quality of the lives of other human beings. Now, when you're coming from that place, you are going to listen in a different way. You're going to listen to complaints in a different way. You'll listen to compliments in a different way. You'll listen to even chit chat in a different way. Everything through the prism of true care for the customer is going to impact you in a different way. And I would argue people are crying out to be listened to. Yeah, they want the service to work. They want the product to work. They also want to be heard. They want to be gotten, if you will. They want to be sort of received about like what matters to them. If you just increase the generosity of your listening, you'd be amazed at how your relationships improve. Now, a generous listener is not just listening for what's my response going to be? What's my rebuttal going to be? How am I going to be right in this situation? How am I going to get what I want? How am I going to win? That's not generous listening. That's confrontational listening. That's me first listening. You might win occasional battles that way because you'll wear people down, but in the long run, it's going to bite you. It's not going to work for you. So generous listening, you're not afraid to actually hear what they're saying, to hear what they're feeling. You really sort of get what do they want? What do they want out of this interaction? What do they want from you? What do they want from your company? What do they want from your service? It's just immeasurably valuable to be a generous listener. You know, you may have heard the phrase "don't shoot the messenger." Well, it's like the general who's in the middle of the battle, and someone comes running up to him saying, Sir, I have bad news," and the general shoots the messenger. It's like, does that solve the problem? You don't have to hear the bad news, but it doesn't make the bad news go away, now does it? All right. And third, invite people to take a stand for themselves. Stand for the value of your offer. Don't rip them off. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times with sales, we're worried about, am I taking advantage of people? And I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to bother them. Well, another way to look at it, if you really stand for what you're offering and you know it's going to make a difference in people's lives, by not selling, by not making a strong invitation, by not powerfully enrolling them in the value of what you're selling, that's actually the ripoff. That's actually how you're letting them down, and you're depriving them of something that would really be valuable for them. So you got to stand for the value of it. See, you're always going to be compromised in your sales initiatives if you're not absolutely standing for the value. You got to like get this at a core level, that what you're offering is good. Now, deep down inside, if you know it's not as good as it could be, well, then we got to go back to the design drawing board, right? And let's get that product or that service to a level that you know is top of the line. All right. So that's we're taking that for granted at this moment, that what you are offering is par excellence. If it is, you got to stand for it. And then there's no shame in offering it once, twice, 3, 10, however many times it takes. Now, that doesn't mean you can't take no for an answer. Sure. It doesn't mean no is the final answer, though, either. Now, as you're quote unquote selling, work with people in the course of the conversation to discover the intersection of what you're offering with their dreams for their life. So you could call this dream fulfillment. You're really in the dream fulfillment business. So, and people love to talk about their dreams, and people love to get clear about their dreams. And then it's up to you as the quote salesperson to have them see that your product, your service, what you're selling is actually the perfect vehicle for them to reach their dream in the fastest, most efficient way possible. Now, you got to invite people to take action. And I say, now, not someday. And you got to be unafraid to ask for them to pay, ask for the money. There's a famous business person who tells this little joke, and he says, I'm going to give you the 4 keys to successful sales. Number 1, ask for the money. and I forgot the other 4, he says. That's part of his joke. So point being, asking for the money is the name of the game. If you don't ask for the money, chances are they're not going to give it to you in most cases. Now, no, N-O, is not a personal rejection, okay? You could say they're temporarily rejecting your offer, your product, your service. But even then, they're not necessarily rejecting it. It's just not a fit for them. Maybe never, but at least right now, it's not a fit. It's not personal. Now, you know that your ego self is probably going to be initially triggered into taking it personally. So just, you know that, so that'll happen, and you'll have those thoughts, they'll float through your consciousness, and you'll have those physical and emotional reactions. Now, they might just happen in a millisecond, a few seconds. Take a deep breath, just notice it. Okay, there's my mechanism, there's my survival mechanism going off. I feel like I'm threatened because they're saying no to my product, and like that means I'm going to die. My ego self is going to die at some level. Deep breath. Okay. See through that. Now, again, you embrace it as, look, that's the context I inherited. It's wired in here as deeply as it can be wired, physically, genetically, psychologically, emotionally. So I can't turn it off completely. But I see by facing that, I see that it's not what the customer said or didn't say that's causing my reaction. I'm rejection waiting to happen. I'm fear waiting to happen. You know what I mean? So by realizing that, you're not stuck with it. You're not controlled by it. And you don't have to act from that place, because you see it as just programming. So you can let it go, get back on the phone, get back on your email, get back on the chat, and start selling again. And the next no might flush up the same reaction. Be with that. Keep moving forward. And even though your ego self takes it personally, you can see through that and remind yourself it's not personal. Now, last thing, learn to welcome challenges as opportunities. When you are upset, when you're triggered, this is actually a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to learn more about yourself, to learn more about what makes you tick, and as a result of that, to not be quite as captured by that old programming. Okay, so it's valuable. Now, in relationship, in a romantic relationship, in a friend relationship, I get it. It's not comfortable when you have those upsets. But by dealing with it responsibly, mutually, facing it head on, working through it, you actually strengthen your relationship. You strengthen your connection. Your intimacy is enhanced. It's kind of like, when you're working out, how do you build muscles? You're actually breaking your muscles down so they can reform stronger. That's the process of building muscle. So it's a pretty good analogy of the way upsets work in life. And challenges in business are the same way. Of course, you do everything you can to avoid any blockage at all in the working out of your commitment. But we all know challenges are going to happen. And if you take those challenges and you let them get the best of you, and you're overwhelmed by them, and you're resisting them, you're just going to make it 10 times worse. So if you can start to reinvent those challenges as opportunities, it's an opportunity to learn about myself. It's an opportunity to make my business even stronger, my service even better, my sales initiative more compelling, my customer service more effective. Maybe even the product or the service is enhanced as a result of this challenge. You wouldn't be the first business to make the most of a challenge. You know what I'm saying? It's very common, although not universal. Lots of people crumble from challenges. So remember, discomfort is not your enemy. Right? Your ego self is just terrified of discomfort, but it's actually not that big of a deal. It's part of life. It comes with just being a human being. So just let it be with you, let it pass through you. It's okay. You're going to survive. You can survive a little discomfort. And in fact, it tells you that you're alive. I mean, can you imagine the boredom and indifference and complete resignation that you would feel if there were no challenges, no adventure, no discomfort whatsoever? That all looks good when you're in the middle of a challenge, but a lot of times we look back at life and it was those moments of challenge, those moments of crisis, those moments of struggle that we look back on most fondly, because we were like in it, man. We were like really fully alive, fully participating, and there's a certain joie de vivre about this. There's a just it's an empowerment that you can't get from comfort. So learn to relish the adventure of the challenge of your business. And even if you get to the place of exponential success building on itself, that's even another adventure. And just keep enjoying it. You're always going to want to be on an adventure, and an adventure is always going to have danger. So surrender to that rather than being afraid of it or resisting it. Now, what I call breakdowns, it's kind of, it's essentially what I mean by a challenge, but you've set a commitment, right? Maybe you have some sales number that you want to hit, a yearly number, big commitment. And along the way, there's obstacles, there's unexpected challenges. So I call those breakdowns. Those are not necessarily the end of the game. Think of them as temporary interruptions. Now, as I said, they're always an opportunity to learn about yourself, learn about the marketplace, learn about how communication works, what kind of communication is more effective. There's always stuff to learn, which is going to keep you young and keep you in the adventure. But now let's make a last distinction here between what I call challenges or breakdowns and what most people call problems. Now, see, a lot of people have problems, but they don't necessarily do anything about them, right? It's like, this is a problem and that's a problem. But the problems, they oftentimes just sit there unattended. I want you to start to think more deeply about this issue, because philosophically, if nobody's doing anything about the so-called problem, can you see that in a way it's not really a problem? If nobody sees it as something to attend to, then I mean, it's only a problem in concept. It's not a problem in reality, or somebody would be doing something about it. So I like to get rid of the terminology problem, because it keeps showing up in that context of something that can just sit there, but we don't do anything about it. So think of your so-called problems, or better put, your breakdowns, as interruptions in your commitment. See, they're only a breakdown because of your commitment, right? So like, if you have a couple that's been dating however many years, and they don't sleep together, they sleep in separate beds, and they're never physically intimate with each other. If you talk to them and they tell you, yeah, we're fine with that, you know, that's how we want our relationship, actually, we mutually agree on that, then that's not a breakdown. It's just, it's something that's happening, but it's sort of meaningless in a way. If, on the other hand, you talk to them and they say or admit, yeah, you know, we haven't been wanting to talk about that, but no, I'm not happy with that situation. I would like us to find a way to create more connection together. If you discover that, well, then the lack of sexual intimacy, then that would be a breakdown. So I want you to tie what you call problems, what you previously called problems, and you now may call breakdowns, tie it to your commitment. It's a way to kind of be responsible too. So you only have the breakdown if you have the commitment. So there's lots of breakdowns and challenges that are going to happen because you're an entrepreneur, because you're your own boss. But you've chosen that, right? You've made that commitment to walk that line, so to speak. That's the game you've chosen to play. And then this, if you look at the specificity of what you're offering, that's part of your commitment too. And then you have your commitment of how much you want to sell, both in quantity and in revenue. That's part of your commitment too. So then whatever happens with, as you go forth toward those results, into that commitment, whatever happens, if it's something that temporarily blocks you, well, it's only an issue to deal with because of your commitment. Okay. And it's a interruption in the ongoing working out of your commitment. It's merely an interruption. Now again, like the couple, if you stand back and you're real with yourself, and it occurs to you, you know, actually, I really don't mind that I didn't hit this sales result. I actually don't want to be number one in the marketplace. I mean, I'm not committed to it. If the world grants me it, I'll take it, but I'm not committed to it. I'm fine on being, you know, top 50 in the marketplace. If that's what you discover, then certain things that would be an issue if you were committed to being number one in the marketplace won't be an issue when you're happy being 50 in the marketplace. Okay, so keep this in mind. This is a way to keep yourself responsible. Keep in mind your so-called problems, your breakdowns, your challenges are intimately related to whatever your commitment is. And your breakdowns will either tell you you need to do something different, or they'll tell you actually you don't have the commitment that you thought you had. In either way, it's good information and you need to be in truth about it. All right. So there's a lot to think about there in terms of applying your centered mindset to your business. Good work. Keep thinking about it, keep working at it, keep practicing. We'll see you next time. Take care.